Hey guys, how you doing? This is Mike McCormick with Advanced Criminology. Today is January 26, 2018. It's about 1 in the afternoon here in Owings Mills, Maryland. Today's discussion we'll talk about the recent shooting of 2 Maryland State Police officers last night responding to a domestic violence call. And then I'll explain a little bit more about my personal experiences dealing with domestic violence when I was on the police department some years ago. But let's get into this report. Last night, approximately around 11 p.m., Maryland State troopers responded to a call for domestic violence. Upon their arrival, they were met by the woman in the home who called and said that her husband and her had been engaged in an argument. The husband pulled a weapon. Subsequently, they wrestled around on the floor for that weapon. The weapon fired. She got up and ran out and notified neighbors. And at that time, the state troopers responded. It was when the police got there that they had made contact with the gentleman inside the home. He was asked several times to come out of the home. He had subsequently barricaded himself inside that home. And as a result of negotiations breaking down with the gentleman, the Maryland State Police Department tactical force decided to enter that home. It was when they decided to enter that home that the gentleman started firing at the officers, striking probably the initial 2 officers who came through the doorway in the legs. The rest of the officers returned fire, killing the man in his home. So pretty much there's a report, special report by the COPS program, which is part of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. And they do these yearly reports or bi-yearly reports where they discuss what factors are involved when it comes to police-involved shootings where officers die in certain situations involving the public. And I encourage you, I'm going to leave the link in the description box just below the video itself so you guys can go to that link. This is an outstanding study. 77 pages, not a long read at all, but it gives you a lot of detailed information about some of the reasons why officers die in the line of duty. And if you have the time, go ahead and get that. Click the link on and give it a read. But here we are again. This time we're not in Baltimore City where officers have been shot and killed or shot. We are in Western Maryland. And we're there where domestic violence can take place. Now, a lot of times, a lot of folks are confused about what constitutes domestic violence. And it's because the term has expanded over the years. And that's why. Domestic violence not only takes place inside someone's home, but it also can take place in the workforce and in the workplace. You all follow the news reports, follow the crime reports. We all know of situations where boyfriends and girlfriends, husbands and wives, significant others have had confrontations on the workplace. And so a lot of policy nowadays frowns down and has been instituted to prohibit actually workplace romances, simply because the research is out there that says that eventually something could happen bad on that workforce between 2 people who work on the same job. And so you have that policy out there now in a lot of places. In fact, there are places now that will fire you. I know they have rules in the police department that frown down upon fraternization. And that's for a number of reasons, not just because of domestic violence, but there are other safety issues involved in terms of policing. So it's out there. Policy's out there. And we know that domestic violence, again, can take place. I've responded to dozens, if not hundreds, of domestic violence calls when I was in the department years ago, when the equipment was poor equipment that we were issued, when my vest only had a front panel and didn't have a back protective Kevlar panel because the police department couldn't afford to buy vests for officers at that particular time. We had officers buying their own vests at one time because domestic violence cases and the type of cases that were going on in the city, got to be pretty bad. And so I had my share of domestic violence cases. And one thing I learned, if I didn't learn anything else, is that you never go into a domestic violence case as a lone officer. Now, I know in some of remember there's 18,000 police departments around the country, and in some of the smaller police departments and communities that actually make up the bulk of policing in America, if you didn't know, in the smaller communities, lots of times you don't have a big force. You may have maybe several to 10, 15 officers in force, and the counties are spread out miles apart. So your backup may take 20 minutes or 45 minutes to get there. And so it's kind of hard. You're in a precarious position because if you're trying to protect someone's life, they can't wait for you to get back up. And so you have to take action. So it puts the officer in a very precarious situation. But the recommendations from the Department of Justice and different safety organizations around the country recommend that, and training academies in the policing also recommend that officers respond to a domestic violence to always have backup before you enter the premises, even before you enter the property. It is also recommended that you have a game plan because you just don't know what you're going to encounter when you enter someone's home. Now, when I was a police officer in a major city, Baltimore, I worked in an area where they had high-rise project housing. And so when we responded to a call, it was usually 3 officers that responded to a call. The only officers that went into the building were the first 2 officers there. The third officer was responsible for watching the vehicles because when we went into the projects, it was just a known fact that, the juveniles and some adults were going to try to trash our vehicles while we were up in the apartments. And if you're on the 15th floor, you can literally look down from the balcony and see the people damaging the vehicle. There's nothing you can do about it. And so, that was just part of policing in those particular neighborhoods back in those 80s. And so policing is different around America. There are many times that we went into the projects, there's no lights in the hallways, there's no lights on the elevator. Elevators don't work. So, I was in my 20s back then, so I was certainly in different shape. I'm 60 now, so I was in different shape then. And so it was easy to go up, 10, 12 flights of steps to handle a call for service. Not to mention that, when you get to that level, you're probably tired. So when you get to a domestic violence, one of the last things you want to do is tussle with, a man or a woman in their own home. And so, that's just my personal, I want to share those experiences with you. There are numerous more, but not for this particular video. But I say that to say that domestic violence calls are probably in the top 5 calls that officers get where they actually are being or put themselves in positions, in life-threatening positions, actually responding to a call. So there are a number of ways that the officers are trained in the academies to ensure that they can have, that they're safe, as well as dealing with the folks who call them for service. So I wanted to mention that, and I just want to leave you with this, is that, again, I want you to take a look at the link that I'm going to leave. And again, it's by the Department of Justice. And right now, according to the last news reports on the 2 officers that were shot, state troopers in Maryland that were shot, they were transported to shock trauma and in good condition. I think they've probably been released by now. And those for receiving those gunshot wounds in the legs. I'm going to leave it at that. There's some other videos I want to put it on that I promised. I just wanted to bring this on and make mention to you about that particular shooting incident, because as we can see, the trend, and it is a trend, that folks aren't scared anymore to start, pulling weapons out on police officers and shooting them down. And so there's a lot of work to be done in policing. There's a lot of work to be done in communities as well. I remember when I was in policing, it was a different type of time, and officers, were highly respected in neighborhoods. and the officers respected the folks that lived in the neighborhoods. And it just seems like over the past 40 years that trend has just, dissipated. And so this is the thing that a lot of so quote unquote academics are working on and practitioners are working on now to find out how can, we get that respect among police, among the community to coincide, so to speak. And so that's what I wanted to leave you with. As always, leave your comments down below and I'll respond to them, and I'll see you next time I post.